What's up? Welcome to the AP Index. My name's Andrew. Today we're going to talk about agencies. If you clicked on this video, then it's likely that you've either considered building an agency in the future or you're working on building one right now. We're going to talk about what is really needed to start an agency and succeed, but we're also going to cover some options that you could do instead. Let's start with my experience. I've worked at multiple agencies in the past on local levels, on global levels, in a multitude of different industries. My roles at those agencies ranged from designing creative to executing full ad campaigns to being the owner of all ad systems within an agency. Now, alongside that, I've also built my own business, Low Tide, which in a lot of people's eyes could be viewed as an agency, but I call it a digital studio. So I've been working with clients for over 7 years in different capacities and on different levels. Now, this experience at agencies taught me a lot about what to do and what not to do whenever approaching my own business. Now let's talk about you. I talk to a lot of different people who have aspirations to have their own agency, whether it is a design agency, design studio, or a full service agency. And I've interacted with a few different types of people who have these aspirations. First are the people who have zero experience qualifying them for having an agency. Now, I say zero experience qualifying them. Does that mean that they are forever disqualified from having one? No, it doesn't. But as it stands, they are not prepared for it. Maybe they spend a lot of time within the content space and they feel like they could grasp it pretty easily. Maybe they understand larger concepts, but they lack the execution piece. But where they stand versus where they want to be, there's a very far distance in between. Because what you have to understand if you want to function as an agency is it is a very, very crowded space. There are massive players in every region, every state, country, and beyond. And it is not always easy to carve out your space within that and to market yourself as an expert, especially if you're not an expert. Next is the type of person who has one skill that can be applied in an agency sense. So this is someone who is very good at design, or this is someone who is very good at media buying. Maybe it's someone who's very good at strategy, but they have one area. If you look at like a general agency, they have maybe one department covered, but then there are all of those other gaps. Now, rarely do you find someone that is the full package, and they're able to cover things from beginning to end, from selling their services and completing proposals and signing the contracts to final reporting on what they've executed on. This area, this full package person is incredibly rare, but that is who you need to be to run a successful agency and feel comfortable running that successful agency. But let's dig into these people a little bit further. So say you are in the position where you don't have any of the skills and experience necessary to build one, but you know it's something you would want to do. First, I would say it's pretty hard to know that it's something you would want to do if you have not experienced that type of work. So you can say, I want to run an agency because it has great margins, because you can work with a lot of cool brands, because it can make great money, all of these reasons. But if you have not done the actual work that you would be providing to people, then there's no way for you to know whether or not you're good at it and whether or not it's fulfilling. So first step, if you are this person right now, is to take a step back and consider your options. Now, outside of that, there is a path forward, and that is deciding what it is that you're wanting to solve for people. So this person needs to learn. This is learning through watching videos like this. It's through educating yourself, trialing things, but it's also through exposure and experience. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want, read as much as you want, but a lot of things can't be fully understood until you have your hands in the work. So my best advice for this type of person would be to start your own project, something where you can essentially practice whatever it is you want to provide to people, but within a closed ecosystem. So this could be starting a small brand. It could be building out a small digital product business. Anything like that allows you to start at the beginning and follow through to the very end and get your hands into each and every part. Because you might think, oh, I can hire out to fill those gaps in my services. And in theory, yes, but whenever you're starting out, realistically, you can't expect to have a high level of income because you can't charge a lot with no experience. So this person needs to learn. Similarly, though, this person needs to expand. Let's use an example of a designer. Say you are very proficient in graphic design and it's something you love and you think that you can do it on a bigger scale and you want to run your own business. You want to have a team underneath you. So you need to consider what else is required of someone running a design studio. It is not just executing on projects. That might be something you want to get out of. So you have to think about overall strategy. You have to think about how you're getting clients, how you're interacting with clients, what type of clients you want to work with. And you have to think about the financial aspect as well. So this person needs to be picking up new skills, expansive skills, and really learning how to be an operator and not just an executor. Because the reality is, if you are in this position where you have one skill or one like primary skill in this area that you are very comfortable with and very good at, then you're probably following a linear path that a lot of people are, where maybe you are working out of their agencies or working in roles where you're like, I've been a designer at 3 different companies and now I want to take it further. So from there, what you need is exposure into the other areas. So if you are still in a job, in a full-time role, you need to be asking yourself, how can I learn and collaborate with the other departments to then be able to provide systems and fix those problems for other people. So this is all about that expansion. Now, if you are this person on the end, if you are the full package, then it's really about honing in on what it is that you want to offer. And this person, frankly, is not quite the focus of this video in particular, but we might have some interesting points for them in a minute. Now, next, I want to zoom back out a bit. I want to talk about whether or not an agency is the right approach. And first, I want to share a conversation I was having the other day. I was talking to a designer, focuses on graphic design, has tried to pick up, framer websites and things like that, and tried to expand a bit. But his goal is to have a design studio. And the reason why I want to talk about this particular conversation is he said something that I've continued to think about since. And what he said is that there are so many designers. He said that does not make me unique, it doesn't make me stand out, and it is crowded. And it is hard to make a living being a freelance designer and pursuing that. Now, in response, I will say that you can absolutely make a good living being a freelance designer and pursuing that path and being a specialist and niching down. You can absolutely do that. But that is not what he wants, right? He wants to be more expansive. He wants to get into this position where he has his design studio. Now, the issue is the gap. It is the gap where he is, as we talked about, he is the one skill specialist. And he wants to get into a position where he can do sales, do outreach, do relationships, partnerships, all of the communication, the organization, the systems, managing a team potentially in the future, strategy, reporting. There's a lot that comes with that. Now, a design studio, you don't have as much reporting and things like that, but you still want to be able to communicate the impact of your work with clients, and that takes skill. So what I talked about with him, because he is a collaborator on a business that I also work with, is I said, well, let me expose you to the other areas of this business. And what I explained is he understands his area. So let's say that this dot here is design. And he stays very focused in on this area. Kind of looks like an egg. And what I said is we need to expand your understanding outward to every area that design touches. So that is brand. And within brand, you need to understand the strategy behind the brand and how to make controlled pivots and how to approach different campaigns and how to adapt it and how to build something that can really stand out in such a crowded online world. So that's one area. And then we also talked about, obviously, marketing. Not a great handwriting day. And the amount that design touches marketing is obviously vast. It touches every area of it. But for him, it's about understanding the numbers behind his work. So if he is designing ads for marketing here and delivering them, what is happening whenever he is in his ideation process? Is he taking the brief and saying, okay, I will produce this exact thing you asked for? Or is he taking it farther? Is he asking for data from the ads that he's produced previously to understand how they perform against each other and how they perform against other types of creatives, whether that be video or creatives designed by someone else? So he needs to understand that strategy and understand the data behind it and how to move forward. Because if he can understand that testing ecosystem that exists right here, it's a cyclical testing system. If he can understand that, then he can start to advise on that. In that alone, this area alone over here is something that a design studio can provide specifically. Yes, you have a lot of design studios who focus on the brand piece. They execute on branding, they build out branding packages and things like that, and it's kind of like project-based. But this over here can be relationship-based. It can be ongoing because you are building the systems that allow them to iterate on creative regularly, and you're building the systems that allow them to improve over time and test. And that is what he needs to understand. Now, we aren't going to cover the other areas that design touches. There are more, like events and things like that, which is important for this particular brand. But the point here is this is how he starts to fill this gap, is by starting to expand and understand these systems at work and these strategies at work. Now let's get into what you should consider doing instead of building an agency. First, we're going to talk about the typical agency client, vendor client relationship. So here we have the business. And typically, the agency acts as an extension of the business. And the bigger you get with this business over here, the smaller of a role that agency might play. And what I mean by that is, if I'm working with a large corporation, it is huge and it is separated into all of these different areas. And so my agency might actually just be focused on this one area, and that is the role. So it's contained. You're working within the silos of corporate America. Now, this can be a very, very good approach. It can work. It works for thousands of companies, thousands of relationships, and there's nothing really wrong with it. But I think that there is a better way to approach it, especially if you are an individual or a very small team. Because what happens here is you end up being an executor. So this role might be exactly what you're trying to escape right now. Maybe you're saying, I'm tired of just churning out designs, or I'm tired of churning out ad campaigns, or whatever it is. I want to be the brain behind things. I want to be driving things. If you attach yourself to a single silo within a large company, then the likelihood of you becoming just an executor is very, very high, because building that trust takes time, and it takes a lot of experience, it takes a lot of expertise, and sometimes it even takes age. So consider that. Consider how that relationship would work, and also consider that if you are pursuing this business, you have a ton of other agencies that are pursuing that same business because they've got money. They have a lot of money. They're a big corporation. And so they have some of the best agencies in the world pursuing them and trying to get that retainer. So that makes your life a lot harder, and a lot of times it'll make it impossible unless you have a way to get your foot in the door. Now, again, this is a big corporation, and so maybe you're thinking, like, I don't even want that. I don't want a big corporation. So let's talk about this size business. Maybe this is a small to medium business. Maybe it's a startup. And so with this relationship, can it work? Can you feel happy with it? I think that it can work, and I think that it can be very lucrative. It is very lucrative. if you are comfortable working within their bounds. Because oftentimes these businesses will say, I want you to execute on this very specific thing. Please run our ad campaigns. Please provide branding. And it is very structured, right? And so if you want to build the systems in order to be able to provide that, that's totally okay. But again, remember that you have all of these other agencies that want in on it too, right? They want to sign them as a client. And these other agencies might have big teams. They might have many, many years of experience. They might have expertise across many more areas that you could handle as an individual or that your small team could handle. So here is how I function instead. And here is what I would suggest you do. If we are looking at this business, what you want to do is be right in here. That's you in the business. Because if you are able to expand your knowledge and you are able to understand how different teams work with each other, how different systems impact each other, and especially if you can even get down to the data and how data operates cross-department and cross-channel, then sitting here in the middle is the best thing that you can do for yourself. Because then what you get to do is you have all of these different areas of the business. Maybe we have marketing, and maybe we have events and branding and operations. And you're able to say, okay, I am going to intersect marketing and operations, and I'm going to work on those systems. And so what are you doing if you are working within marketing and operations? Maybe you are streamlining things. So you're streamlining the content systems that are functioning within that marketing. Maybe you are streamlining how other teams get their input and their information to marketing, because that is a major bottleneck at times where maybe this events team is saying, marketing is always behind, they're not covering all of our events. And so you can step in and say, I know exactly how to build out this communication system. But the point here is that you are solving a specific problem. And what is better is if you can become one of the only people who can solve that problem for them. So you take all of your additional experience, no matter what it's in, no matter what industry, and you take that and you expand it. And you say, what am I uniquely positioned to solve? And if you are able to answer this question, then you are able to go into a team, sit in the middle, or sit within different areas and solve this problem over and over and over in a way that other agencies are not. Now, we're going to go back to me for a minute, and I'm going to explain this problem that I solve. So in agencies, I have worked in a ton of areas. I know that I'm missing letters there, but these are agency areas, and those are honestly just a few of the ones that I've covered. But then I've also been a founder and a business owner. And so what do those teach me? I not only have been a business owner, but I've been a business owner multiple times. And so what has happened is I have gone from beginning to end multiple times. I have come up with an idea, and I have gone through building the idea, testing it, executing it, strategizing, I've marketed, and then I've reported, and I've scaled things. So I have gone through this over and over and over. So now I understand every area of different types of businesses very, very well. So I'm able to find the intersection of my experience over here and solve a specific problem for people. And right now, typically I call that is growth systems. So I act as a growth partner for people. And I join teams, and I typically work directly with the founder, and I say, okay, yes, we're going to work on your paid media and your Instagram ads and all of that. Yes, we're going to work on, how your ads look and improving the design and things like that. And I'll build out a media plan and all of those typical agency things. But what I go further with is I say, we're going to build out a content system for you so that we can execute and iterate at a faster rate. And so I am stepping into their team, into their internal processes, and fixing what is broken or what has never been built, right? Because a lot of teams, a lot of young teams and small teams especially, and single founders don't understand everything that is possible and everything that is necessary to make their operations function smoothly. So I build growth systems. And again, that is like things like content, but it's also looking at product development and supporting on that. It's looking at how the business is scaling as a whole in areas where we need to cut fat and other areas where we need to build more efficiency. And so these growth systems, I call it that because it is expansive. If we zoom back out to you, and I know we've been talking about design a lot, but you could be a person who implements design systems and helps work within teams. And maybe that does include doing some design, but it's taking it further and it helps you build the relationship further, earn more money, and also be a very unique offering to people. So think about that word. Think about the systems and how you can help people do things themselves, how you can share your expertise and help people go beyond. So the agency is over here, and this is you. This is a single lane, but you function in an expansive way. You're flexible. You work with people. You are understanding of their situation because it is an intersection of what you understand. Now, the last thing that I want to cover here is, what do you do if maybe this idea of yours is a bit of a career shift, right? Maybe you are in the plumbing industry. I'm picking this because it is not digital, it's not online, and it's typically not an area that people are doing a lot of innovation in. So maybe you're in plumbing. Maybe you're not a plumber, but maybe that's where you've been. Let's use that as an example. It'll challenge us a little bit. And then maybe what you want to get into is just like marketing. Maybe you want to get into digital marketing, which is broad. But maybe you've had the thought of like, plumbing companies aren't doing enough with their digital marketing. This is your experience. This is what you don't have. This is what you're inexperienced in. If you're here and you need to understand what to do over here, you need to be digging deeper into what you're doing right now. You need to be learning more about the issues that come up within this area. What's the sticking point? What have people not considered? And how can you step in to uniquely serve them? Because plumbing companies, they are absolutely receiving phone calls, receiving emails from agencies trying to get them to buy into their services. But if you can come in and say, well, I've worked in that industry and I understand it well, that immediately builds trust. And then from there, you can say, this is what you need. You don't need any of that other stuff. We're not going to sell you on services we don't need because we understand you. That automatically takes you levels above that generic agency. This is what we're focused on, is that intersection. And if you can find that intersection and expand yourself and expand your understand systems, then you don't need to build a standard agency. You can be an individual operator, an individual actor, have a small team, whatever you want, and you can go and solve very real problems for people.